Hello and welcome to Heart Containers, a daily Nintendo podcast where every Monday through Friday we discuss the latest Nintendo news. I'm your host, Rami Fawaz, and this is the episode for Friday, March 15th. I just want to start off by apologizing. We've missed the show these last 2 days. I've been feeling sick, so I had to step out of here and not do the podcast. Fortunately, there has not been that much news as a whole. This week actually has been pretty slow in terms of Nintendo stuff. So, some weeks you get some weeks you don't. We already had a lot of commotion in these past few weeks with starting with that Nintendo Direct and the Pokemon Direct and then Nintendo Labo VR. We've learned a lot of stuff recently, so it makes sense that maybe this week was a bit slower, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a bunch of things to talk about. I'm going to start by talking about some game updates going into the weekend that you should probably be aware of, some other game ports that might be making their way onto the Switch, including Borderlands 2 and Castle Crashers, and finally Xbox Live on Nintendo's platform. What could that service look like on the Nintendo Switch? We finally have some more information about what Microsoft is doing with Xbox Live on other platforms, so we're going to talk about what that could mean for the Nintendo Switch. So all of that and a little bit more in today's daily Nintendo report.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality, and it's called the Wii U Game Pen.
Let's start off by talking about some gaming experiences that you should all probably be aware of going into this weekend. Kid Icarus and Star Tropics, the games that were announced earlier in the month to be joining the Nintendo Switch Online NES service, well, they're finally available as of yesterday. So if you wanted to play those games, it's a good time to jump in. If you're not interested in Kid Icarus or Star Tropics, they are also continuing the tradition of releasing special mode games as well, or SP games, if you will, along with Kid Icarus and Star Tropics. So the two games that are getting an SP re-release are Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and Kirby's Adventure. And basically all that means is that those games are released with a special caveat or a mode that actually makes them play a little bit differently, but they're still essentially the same experience. So the Kirby's SP title just allows you the access to start the extra game mode from the beginning, and Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link SP allows you to play as a Link whose stats are completely maxed out, something that I am personally attracted to just because I know how difficult Zelda 2 is. It's actually the only Zelda game that I haven't beaten. I got halfway through that game and had to put it down. It's really difficult, but it also plays fairly differently when you compare it to other Zelda experiences. It does not play the same way, so I didn't have the motivation to trudge through the difficulty, but now with this SP title where I can play as a maxed out Link and not have nearly the same amount of complications this time around, and it's actually kind of calling my name. Out of the 4 games that are joining the list, or rather have already joined the list as of yesterday to the NES library, that's probably the one I'm most likely to jump into. Right under that is probably Star Tropics, because that game has a dedicated fan base, man. I've talked to a lot of people who are super passionate about Star Tropics, never played the game myself. I'll probably try it out just a little bit. Now, here's another game that you should be aware of. Deltarune Chapter 1, the spiritual successor to the cult indie classic Undertale, is coming back to the eShop. It was actually taken down last week because of some rating issue. So the game originally came to the eShop at the end of February. It was supposed to be free. It was a big deal. They talked about it during the Nintendo Direct a few weeks back. But then it was taken down because at some point in the game, something happens that I guess whoever was rating the game was not aware of, and it was discovered after the fact. So they took it back down to give it a more appropriate rating. Well, it's finally gone back up. I double checked myself to make sure that was true, and yes, it is true. You can search for Deltarune and you can download it. So I would make sure to get on that just in case they decide to pull it down again for some reason. But it is free, so if you liked Undertale, Deltarune is back. You can download that starting anytime this weekend. We also have Captain Toad Treasure Tracker Special Episode DLC. That's a bit of a mouthful, but I'm excited for that. Again, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker has been on the Switch for a while now. They updated it recently so you could play the entire game in co-op with a friend that has thrilled my wife because she absolutely loves that game and we can actually play it together. But on top of that, they announced that there are going to be new DLC updates coming to Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, and those came out yesterday. So it's $6 extra. It's really cheap for DLC, and it comes with 18 new challenges from 5 new courses. I think this is probably the most exciting thing for me personally coming out during this week that I'm probably going to play this weekend. And finally, this is your last last possible reminder actually, that there is a Splatoon 2 Splatfest starting tomorrow. The teams again are Knights versus Wizards. If you want to participate, this is going to be one of the last Splatfests for Splatoon 2 period. Again, they're going to be done with that in July. I will not be playing because I lost all of my multiplayer data when my Switch broke earlier in the year, so I just have not been motivated to join Splatoon 2, but it should last all of Saturday Eastern time. I know that the timings are a bit different depending on where you live. Saturday, basically. Now let's switch gears from games that have already been announced and are coming out or have already come out to games that we aren't sure about but are being teased by other developers to come out on the Nintendo Switch very, very soon. Some developers dropping hints yesterday about what might be coming onto the platform. The first comes from the indie developer The Behemoth, known for Xbox 360, Xbox Live Arcade classic Castle Crashers. Castle Crashers was one of those games at the forefront of the home console indie scene that really just made people realize that they could and should download smaller titles onto that console. I mean, the Xbox 360 indie scene was nuts. That's where we got games like Fez and Braid and Super Meat Boy. And at the start of all of it really was Castle Crashers that came out right at the beginning back in 2008. And since then, it has been ported to almost every single platform after that point, except for, I think, PS4 and Nintendo platforms. But it has been re-released multiple times because people love it. It's basically a side-scrolling beat 'em up with 4-player multiplayer that you can play online or locally, and it's just a lot of silly humor with one big fun factor. It's just a blast to get into and play, especially with your friends, and now it is seemingly going to make its way onto the Nintendo Switch. The developer, again, The Behemoth, tweeted a picture of 4 Joy-Con controllers in the same colors of the main Castle Crasher characters. So unless this is like a sequel announcement in disguise, I think it's safe to assume that this game is coming to the Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure what else a tweet like this could mean. Again, 4 Joy-Cons standing right next to each other. Definitely a Switch announcement of some type. With the colors of Castle Crashers, has to be related to Castle Crashers in a certain way. I'm going to put my money on it being a direct port of Castle Crashers onto the Nintendo Switch. If I was the Behemoth, being an indie developer looking around, I would have definitely seen how well and how successful these indie development studios have done on the Nintendo Switch thus far, and thought to myself, hey, we have a great idea. It's done us well so far when we released it on the Xbox 360, on PC, and Xbox One. Why not bring our little community and expand it that much more onto a platform that's doing incredibly well for indies all over the place? I mean, we just found out about Hollow Knight. This is a great example of this, where when Hollow Knight released, it was cross-platform for home consoles, but now it's actually going to release home console partial exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. The sequel, Hollow Knight Silk Song, is going to come out first on the Nintendo Switch just because it is the one that they wanted to focus on the most because of how successful Hollow Knight has been on Nintendo's platform. So no surprise that the Behemoth is really starting to pay attention to the Nintendo Switch because they have this iconic Castle Crashers franchise that has done so well within the indie community in the past. Now, something else also on Twitter that was being talked about yesterday is the Gearbox, a much, much bigger and well-known developer because they are a AAA developer known for their fan favorite Borderlands series. Well, they have been posting several mysterious pictures of games that they're planning to talk about more at PAX East at the end of the month. And many believe that they were finally teasing the long-awaited Borderlands 3. That's probably still true. It's probably still very accurate that they are teasing Borderlands 3, but after yesterday's tweet, it seems like they might be hinting towards even more than that. The caption stated, "Time to tease another game for PAX." And under that caption was a blatantly obvious picture of Borderlands 2. It was a picture of Borderlands 2, but it was posted in a very slightly blurred way, so you couldn't see it pixel perfect. It wasn't immaculate. There was blur involved, but it was still very obvious. It had Maya in it, one of the characters from Borderlands 2, standing in front of a structure that is very obviously from Borderlands 2, so it did not seem like they were hiding it in any way, shape, or form. So that is very significant for Nintendo fans because Borderlands 2 is currently available in one way or another on every major platform at the moment except for the Switch. So you can play Borderlands 2 as part of the Handsome Collection on PS4 and Xbox One. You can play Borderlands 2 on Xbox 360, on PS3, on PC. I mean, Borderlands 2 even made its way onto platforms like the PS Vita and the Nvidia Shield. So Borderlands 2 is virtually everywhere. There's a VR version of Borderlands 2. It is hard to imagine what else they could be talking about, what other platform they could be bringing that game to besides the Nintendo Switch. And if it's not a port, then what other type of announcement could they be, hinting towards? Because this is almost a directly confirmation that this is a scene coming from Borderlands 2 itself. It's not hinting towards a new DLC. It's not hinting towards maybe these characters are being brought back in Borderlands 3 or anything like that. This is like a scene grab from Borderlands 2. To me, that screams port. And what other system could they be porting it to except for the Nintendo Switch? So not only did I mention earlier was that game released for last generation's PlayStation Vita, but also the Nvidia Shield, which is important because the Nvidia Shield is actually using a very similar Tegra chip to the Switch. So this game has a history of being on portable consoles. It has a history of using the similar architecture to the Nintendo Switch. So that implies that not only is this Borderlands 2 port possible, but it's likely going to be very inexpensive for the company. This is very, very much in the realm of possibilities for what Gearbox could be doing. And if they're about to announce something big like a Borderlands 3, then this could go right alongside the marketing plan of saying, hey, while other platforms or other fans who have Xboxes and PlayStations are getting excited for Borderlands 3, we can give something to the Nintendo fans so that they can also join in the conversation together. All of those conversations are going to make like a symphony, a resounding symphony in support of Borderlands, and eventually have this major push for Borderlands at some point in the future. It makes a lot of sense. And in the same way as the behemoth kind of sitting on the sidelines and looking at the success of indies on the Nintendo Switch, you have to imagine that Gearbox is also sitting on the sidelines looking at third parties and seeing how many of them are bringing over ports onto the Nintendo Switch in one way or another. That has to be because ports are doing well on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, it doesn't take a science degree to go back and look at the Wii U and see how ports did on the Wii U, and how after a year of the Wii U being on the market, we didn't see any ports anymore. It was very, very slim. Third parties got really gun shy about the Wii U very, very quickly after it released because it became very obvious almost instantaneously that the Wii U was not going to be a platform where they could succeed. 2 years after the Switch has released, and we're still getting announcements, tons of announcements from third parties. It seems like not only are they bringing more games or bringing games to the Switch, but they're bringing more games than we ever could possibly have imagined. I mean, look at companies like Square Enix bringing the entire Final Fantasy library. It seems bringing all these, bringing Dragon Quest 11S and making it the premier title coming out later this year in terms of JRPGs. You have Capcom bringing the Resident Evil library over. You have third parties feeling very confident about the Switch going into the Switch's third year. So it makes sense that a company like Gearbox, who kind of has this in their pocket, they have a game that people love with Borderlands 2. And not only that, but it works really well for portability. It's come to every major platform, it seems, including handheld platforms, including platforms that use similar architectures to the Nintendo Switch. It makes so much sense. I totally buy in to this being an actual thing, even though in terms of an announcement, it is way less official than the behemoth one with Castle Crashers, which is very obviously a Switch something at the very least. This doesn't necessarily mean Switch, but through deductive reasoning, it definitely hints towards Switch in that way. And I am personally very excited about that thought because I love Borderlands. In a world where it seems like every single looter shooter or almost every major game that plays kind of similarly to Borderlands, these games are massive online experiences like Anthem and Destiny and stuff like that. The Division 2, which is just about to release. I'm glad that Borderlands exists, especially Borderlands 2, as being a smaller scope title that lets you play the game almost entirely on your own And when you want to interact with friends, you can do it locally, you can do it small scale. It's nowhere near it's nowhere near as big in scope as those other guys, and I appreciate it for that reason, because sometimes I don't want to be feeling like I'm playing an MMO. I want to be feeling like I'm playing a single player RPG-esque style experience with the fun controls of a first-person shooter, with the looting mechanics that keeps you hooked, but also with some friends whenever that is available. And Borderlands is the perfect experience for that. And doing it on the go, if possible, or doing it with my Switch sounds great to me. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about both of these games in the near future. And the last story on the report has to deal with our friends at Microsoft. They have announced that Xbox Live is officially coming to iOS and Android devices. But before you remind me that this is in fact a Nintendo podcast, it's important to keep in mind that weeks ago, the company also revealed that Xbox Live, the software development kit for Xbox Live, was going to be expanding to not only iOS, not only Android, but also the Nintendo Switch. That was an official announcement. I know that we got several rumors about Microsoft and Nintendo doing all sorts of things in the recent few weeks about Game Pass and games coming to Nintendo Switch, and most of those have been rumors. But this Xbox Live thing, that was an announcement about what they were going to talk about during the Game Developers Conference, and it specifically stated Nintendo Switch. So I'm talking about the official part, what we know that Xbox is doing for Nintendo, and that has to do with Xbox Live. Now, they haven't said anything about Xbox Live with Nintendo Switch, but this announcement talks about what they're doing with iOS and Android, and what they're doing with those platforms is going to strongly hint towards what they can and will do with the Nintendo Switch. So after yesterday's announcement, we have a much better idea of what that is. It's being said that Xbox Live features such as the achievement system, gamer score, hero stats, friends lists, clubs, and some family settings will be made available through a newly launched mobile software development kit. So what that means exactly is a little bit unclear, but I would say that if you're a developer making a game for Android or iOS, you now have access, or you will have access very soon, to utilize things like achievements and gamer score in your game as smoothly as possible. So I would assume that if you're playing a game on your iOS, you would log in with your Xbox Live account, and then all of a sudden you could pop off achievements just like you were playing any other game. Or maybe you could open a friends list and talk to your friends just like you were doing, or you would be doing, on an Xbox Live platform. So here's a quote that went along with this news. "We believe so strongly in community and Xbox Live really being at the heart of our gaming community. If you watch what we've done, especially with Minecraft over the past few years, we've taken Xbox Live to as many platforms as Minecraft is on as possible, really uniting all those communities together with a consistent, singular experience for those gamers." So that's just them kind of explaining that, hey, Minecraft is like the example that we're trying to follow. Even though Microsoft owns Minecraft entirely, they've still been pretty liberal about where they put that game. It's on every platform. It's on the Switch, right? And they're saying we kind of want to follow suit with what we do with Xbox Live as we're doing with Minecraft. Now, they were also asked about the Nintendo Switch, obviously, because they mentioned that this was coming to Nintendo Switch at some point, and this is what they had to say. "Our goal is to really unite the 2 billion gamers of the world, and we are big fans of our Xbox Live community, but we don't have any specific announcements as it relates to Switch today." So again, that's not really a denial or anything like that. It's saying, hey, yeah, our goal is to unite all gamers, all 2 billion of them, probably across every single possible gaming platform imaginable. We're just not ready to talk about the Switch announcement, probably because they have more things to figure out about it. I would assume that the Nintendo Switch, bringing Xbox Live to the Switch, is a bit more complicated than bringing it onto iOS and Android, or there's some partnership deal that they're trying to work out with Nintendo, and they're going to take their time with that. Right now, they're focused on iOS and Android, but I really wanted to look into what this could mean for the Switch. I mean, this, if they take Xbox Live in the same way like they're doing with iOS and Android, and they bring it onto the Nintendo Switch, then let's say when an Xbox game comes out on the Switch, at the minimum, right? Because you assume that Microsoft Game Studios and Microsoft published games are definitely going to make use of this software development kit. So Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is going to be one of those games. It's developed and being published by Microsoft, developed by a Microsoft-owned studio, coming out on Nintendo Switch at some point this year. If Xbox Live is available at that time, you would guess that while you're playing Hellblade, maybe as you do things, you're popping off achievements. Like maybe that same achievement icon literally comes down while you're playing Nintendo Switch and says, hey, achievement unlocked, like gamer score increased, as if you were playing on an Xbox console. Does that seem like something you would be interested in? Like, how would that also play if Nintendo ever decides to have their own achievements? Would you unlock both achievements? Would developers have to choose between one achievement or the other? I'm also really curious what this means for in-party chat or talking with your friends, inviting your friends between one game or another. Because this is a software development kit that Xbox and Microsoft is making available to everyone, it's not just exclusive to them. I would assume that what that could mean is that a third party, let's say Electronic Arts with FIFA as an example, you're playing FIFA, you don't have to use Nintendo's friend code system or friend system where it's really janky at the moment, where you can't really invite people to play with you. Maybe you can use Microsoft's infrastructure instead. So you're playing FIFA, you want to play with one of your friends who's playing Madden, you log in with your Xbox Live account, and in FIFA, you see your friend who's playing Madden, and you can click on them and say, hey, do you want to play FIFA with me? And sure, they won't be able to go around the OS and just jump into FIFA immediately through like an invite, but they could close Madden, open FIFA, and then again log in with their gamer Xbox Live account, and then have it all work through the game itself, as long as that game is supporting Xbox Live through this development kit that Microsoft is supplying. It's really bizarre that this could be happening, that this might be happening, that Microsoft is kind of fixing problems for Nintendo by doing this. But what does that mean for Nintendo as a whole? I'm really curious to see how Nintendo is going to react to this, because some of these features maybe Nintendo will never get to. Like I mentioned achievements earlier, Nintendo may never do achievements, not natively, even though I really want them to. That would be really fun. But Nintendo definitely, it would baffle me. It would flabbergast me if Nintendo never decided to work on, let's say, their voice chat, on their friend inviting functionality on the Switch, in which case, if this friends list and being able to invite people to your games on Xbox Live is already a thing, will Nintendo try to downplay that? Will Nintendo try to ban that? Well, like, what will Nintendo do whenever they decide to say, okay, now here is our solution to that problem? Otherwise, you might have like two competing solutions at the same time, and third parties will have big question marks about them. Indies, anyone who's trying to use this development kit to make their own games, about, hey, should we try to implement Microsoft's version of this or Nintendo's version of this? That's going to be really interesting to me. I'm fascinated by this. I want to know more about what Microsoft has in store for Nintendo. This is the confirmed stuff. We know that Microsoft is bringing Xbox Live to Nintendo, but I also want to know more about the rumored stuff as well. How far does this rabbit hole go? And that's all I had scheduled for today's show. Again, if you have any reason to contact me or talk to me about anything that we talked about in the show, make sure you head over to the website, heartcontainerspodcast.com. Or if you want to talk to me more personally, I have a Twitter account I actively use. It's at RomeFawaz. That's ROMEFAWAZ. This has been the Heart Containers episode for Friday, March 15th. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had a great week. And I also hope that you have a great weekend. Make sure to tune in on Monday, where we talk about more Nintendo news.